All right, let's ditch those cucumber eye masks and really dive deep today, you guys. Today we're tackling self-care.
Ooh, yes.
And, you shared the ultimate guide to self-care with us.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's packed with insights that go way beyond, the typical bubble bath and chill vibes.
Right.
We're going to be talking about real, actionable strategies for a more balanced and fulfilling life. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think this guide really emphasizes that holistic approach.
Okay.
We're not just talking about pampering ourselves. It's about nurturing our mental and emotional and physical well-being, like feeling good from the inside out.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the guide says you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
It's not selfish to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
It's actually crucial if you want to show up as your best self in all areas of life.
And what I found really fascinating was how the guide, debunks the myth of the generic self-care routine. Like it highlights that what works for one person might not work for another. It's about finding what truly resonates with you.
Okay, so how do we figure out what fills our individual cups? The guide talks about these 5 pillars of self-care, right?
Exactly. We've got physical, emotional, mental, social, and spiritual. Each pillar plays a unique role in supporting your overall well-being.
Okay, so let's start with the physical pillar. I'm guessing this goes beyond just hitting the gym.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's about nourishing your body with movement, nutritious food, and adequate sleep. But the guide makes it clear that it's not about striving for perfection. It's about, finding sustainable habits that feel good for your body. What resonated with you from this section?
Yeah, I really like the emphasis on small wins.
Yes.
Like even just taking a 10-minute walk or opting for a healthy snack can make a difference.
Right.
Sometimes those small choices can feel more empowering than trying to overhaul your entire routine overnight.
I agree. It's about building momentum and finding what you can realistically incorporate into your daily life.
Speaking of building momentum, let's talk about the emotional pillar. I think a lot of people, myself included, struggle with processing their emotions in a healthy way. What insights does this guide offer in this area?
Well, it dives into some really practical tools like journaling and mindfulness.
Okay.
It explains that by acknowledging and processing our emotions, we create space for greater self-awareness and emotional regulation.
I've heard a lot about mindfulness, but honestly, I'm not sure I fully understand what it is. Does the guide break that down?
It does. Think of mindfulness as a mental pause button. Instead of getting swept away by your emotions, you learn to observe them without judgment, almost like watching clouds drift by. The guide even includes a few simple mindfulness exercises you can try. We could dive into those a bit later if you'd like.
Yeah, let's definitely do that. I'm already feeling more intrigued by mindfulness. Now, what about the mental pillar? Is this where we get into brain games and puzzles?
Not quite. Think of it more as mental fitness. The guide emphasizes activities that challenge your mind, reduce stress, and promote cognitive flexibility. Things like reading, learning a new skill, or simply taking breaks throughout the day to give your brain a rest.
So it's about finding activities that make our minds feel more agile.
Exactly. And just like with physical exercise, you don't have to go from 0 to 60. Start with small steps, like dedicating 10 minutes a day to reading or learning a new language on an app. The key is to find something that feels stimulating and enjoyable.
Makes sense, yeah. It's about creating a mental space that feels both challenging and restorative.
Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about the social pillar. This one might seem obvious, but the guide really delves into the nuances of healthy relationships and their impact on our overall well-being.
Okay, so it's not just about having a ton of friends.
Right. It's about nurturing meaningful connections, setting boundaries with those who drain our energy, and finding a sense of belonging within our communities. The guide reminds us that we're wired for connection, and those bonds can provide immense support and joy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We're social creatures, and having strong relationships is essential for both our mental and emotional health.
Speaking of connection, let's move on to the final pillar, spiritual self-care. This one is perhaps the most individualized as it involves connecting with something larger than ourselves. What stood out to you about this section?
I love that the guide doesn't prescribe any specific beliefs or practices. It recognizes that spirituality is deeply personal and can take many forms, whether it's through meditation, prayer, spending time in nature, or even just practicing gratitude.
Exactly. It's about finding practices that help you tap into a sense of meaning, purpose, and connection beyond your everyday experience. The guide even explores the scientific benefits of these practices, like reducing stress and boosting feelings of peace and contentment.
So we've got these 5 pillars: physical, emotional, mental, social, and spiritual.
It's pretty comprehensive when you look at it that way. But I'm guessing the guide goes beyond just defining these categories, right?
Oh, absolutely. It
Yeah.
gets into the nitty-gritty of how to actually integrate these pillars into your daily life.
Yeah.
And to illustrate that, it shares the inspiring story of Sarah.
Oh, yes. I was curious about her story. It sounds like she was really struggling to find balance before discovering the power of self-care. Tell me more about her journey.
Yeah, Sarah's story really, hooked me. She's this busy mom who was juggling work and family and all the things, and, she was feeling completely burnt out. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people can relate to that.
Absolutely. Sarah's story is a powerful reminder that even the most organized and capable individuals can reach a point where self-care becomes essential, not a luxury.
So what steps did Sarah take to turn things around? The guide mentioned she started small. Did she dive headfirst into all 5 pillars at once?
Not at all. The guide emphasizes the importance of a gradual approach. Sarah began by incorporating just 10 minutes of meditation into her morning routine.
Okay.
She also scheduled weekly coffee dates with a close friend and made it a point to go for a walk during her lunch break.
Those sound like really manageable steps, even for someone with a packed schedule. Did she notice a difference right away?
Well, according to the guide, it took a few weeks, but the impact was significant. Sarah reported feeling more energized and focused.
Wow.
She was also more present with her family and felt better equipped to handle the demands of her day.
That's amazing. It really shows that consistency is key.
Yeah.
Even small acts of self-care, when practiced regularly, can create a ripple effect that positively impacts various aspects of our lives.
Precisely. And Sarah's story highlights another important point. Self-care doesn't have to be this grand, time-consuming endeavor.
Right.
It's about weaving manageable practices into your daily life in a way that feels sustainable.
I'm curious about the tools and resources section of the guide. Did it offer any specific suggestions for incorporating self-care into a busy routine?
Absolutely. It's packed with practical advice. For those interested in exploring meditation, it recommends apps like Calm or Headspace.
Okay.
They offer guided meditations and mindfulness exercises, perfect for beginners or anyone looking to deepen their practice.
I've heard great things about those apps. And what about folks who are more focused on their physical well-being? Did the guide offer any tips in that area?
Yes, it suggests using apps like MyFitnessPal to track food intake, set goals, and make healthier choices. But it goes beyond just calorie counting. It emphasizes mindful eating and tuning into your body's hunger cues.
That's a great point. It's not just about what we eat, but also how we eat. What about those of us who prefer a good old-fashioned book?
The guide has you covered. It recommends titles like The Self-Care Solution by Jennifer Ashton and The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. Both books offer valuable insights and practical strategies for prioritizing self-care.
Those are great recommendations. But what if you don't have a lot of free time? Did the guide address that common challenge?
It did. It suggests dedicating just 5 minutes each day to a self-care activity that truly fills your cup. That could be listening to your favorite music, stretching, or simply enjoying a cup of tea in silence.
I love that. It's a reminder that self-care doesn't have to be a huge time commitment. Even those small pockets of time can be used to recharge and reconnect with yourself.
And as the guide wisely states, the key is to make self-care a consistent part of your routine. Even small, intentional acts can have a significant impact on your overall well-being.
You know, as we're discussing all these practical tips, I'm realizing that self-care is more than just pampering ourselves.
Yeah.
It's really about investing in our long-term health and happiness,
Um,
wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, self-care is an act of empowerment.
Okay.
It's about taking ownership of our well-being and making conscious choices that support our mental, emotional, and physical health.
That's such an important point. It's about recognizing that we have the power to influence our own well-being.
Yeah.
But it's a journey, not a destination, right? There's a finish line when it comes to self-care.
Think exactly. It's about continually exploring what nourishes you, making adjustments along the way and celebrating the small victories. It's about recognizing that self-care isn't selfish. It's essential.
And when we prioritize our own well-being, we're better equipped to show up for others, pursue our passions, and navigate life's challenges with greater resilience. What resonates with you most from this idea of self-care as a journey?
Well, for me, it's that idea of self-care is like an ongoing exploration. It's not about finding the perfect routine and sticking to it rigidly.
Yeah.
It's more about being curious and trying new things, discovering what works best for you at any given moment.
I agree. And it's about giving yourself permission to adjust your self-care practices as your needs and circumstances change.
Yeah.
What energizes you today might be different from what you need a month or a year from now. It's almost like having this personalized self-care toolkit that you can draw from whenever you need a little boost.
I like that a lot. And it's a toolkit that you continue to expand and refine throughout your life. What's one tool you think you'll reach for after our deep dive today?
Well, honestly, I'm really intrigued by mindfulness. I think incorporating even a few minutes of mindful breathing or meditation into my day could make a big difference. What about you? Any takeaways that particularly resonated with you?
I was particularly struck by the emphasis on small wins. It's a powerful reminder that self-care doesn't have to be this elaborate production. Sometimes the simplest acts like taking a walk in nature or savoring a cup of tea can be incredibly nourishing.
Yeah, it's those little moments of intentional self-care that can really shift our perspective and help us feel more grounded and balanced.
And they're often more sustainable than trying to implement big sweeping changes all at once.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into self-care, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought. Now that you've gotten a deeper understanding of self-care and its multifaceted nature, what's one small change you can make today to start filling your cup? It doesn't have to be anything drastic, just a small step in the right direction.
Yeah, that's a great question. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination. Start small, be consistent, and most importantly, be kind to yourself along the way.
Beautifully said.
Go.
And that concludes our deep dive into self-care. We hope you feel inspired and empowered to make self-care a non-negotiable part of your life. Until next time, take care.